Good afternoon, I'm Meteorologist Bailey Braun, and today I'll be taking you through what we can expect in the overnight hours with the aftermath of this storm, as well as our statewide forecast, since during our newscasts we were pretty much unable to cover much of anything else due to the significance of this storm. So we'll just kind of jump right into it. Let's see here. With looking right now at Nome, we're seeing that those temperatures are staying relatively normal, but those wind gusts are definitely much weaker than what we were seeing earlier today, with those gusts up to 75 miles an hour. And they're starting to taper off, which is the good news. So those winds are finally starting to die down just a bit. But you can see from our FAA weather cameras that the moisture in the air obviously was pretty heavy and very significant, including the rainfall that we were seeing. Now, I just wanted to throw in a viewer photo from Jojo Prince of the storm impacts in Bethel, and then I also wanted to show some of the storm impacts in Quigling. I'm so sorry that I messed that up, but this storm impacts here were very significant, and we got a few photos from Bree Paul, so thank you, Bree, for sending these photos in. But you can just see all of the damage that hit from both flooding as well as those high winds that started to move on through. So with our weather headlines specifically, wind gusts and storm surge will continue into the overnight hours into Monday, but the good news is that water levels are beginning to subside by 1 to 3 feet from what we saw yesterday, but the highest water levels will go into tonight into Monday. So that is one of the lingering effects that we'll be seeing, but the good news is that we are starting to finally get some relief from those wind gusts. So right now, the eye of the storm is near Utqiagvik, and that's going to be shifting into the Beaufort Sea, moving on through. And those wind gusts you can see are pretty much spanning across the Brooks Range rather than hanging out in western Alaska, which we had seen pretty much all day yesterday and overnight. So now those winds are beginning to shift into the Brooks Range, which adds on to a winter storm warning that we're seeing for the interior as well. So once that starts to push out, we're not going to really be seeing much rain or any more storm surges across the western coast. Utqiagvik, you're not really going to be seeing too many impacts from the storm as it approaches, but you will see between 1 to 3 feet of water level rise from that. So I wanted to show this graphic. This is from the National Weather Service and NOAA. This is one of their satellites, and it shows the purple is dry air and the green is moist air. So it just shows you how big this spiral is from the storm and how it spans all the way across into south central, all the way down into southeast Alaska. So it just proves just how large the storm was and how tightly knit that inner spiral is of the storm and the eye of the storm. So that just kind of puts it into a little bit of perspective. But moving on through with our satellite and radar, we have our winter storm warning and just general storm warnings continuing, and you're going to see that the high wind warning is also hanging out quite a bit, but it's not as busy as what we were seeing yesterday. These warnings are going to expire overnight tonight and then also into Monday afternoon. So just looking at that eye right now, it's starting to shift north above Kotzebue, moving up into Utqiagvik. Those winds are already much weaker than what we were seeing yesterday, but the coastal flood warning is one of the biggest impacts that we're going to continue to see for tonight going into Monday. Now, not to sound repetitive, but the good news with this water levels is that these are actually between 1 to 3 feet lower than what we were seeing yesterday. So in Unalakleet, we were seeing between 7 and 11 feet of increased water levels. So we're going to see a little bit more of relief coming from those water levels as they begin to recede just slightly. But you know, every little bit counts. So even though it's not a whole lot, you can already see improvements beginning to get made from the storm starting to move away from that coastline and starting to bring a little bit more relief into the western coast. Now looking ahead, I just want you to know that more benign and dry conditions are expected for western Alaska. You can see all the way up from the northern slope all the way down into Bethel. You're going to see drier conditions for Monday morning, but then we do have more moisture moving into south central, spanning all the way down into southeast, and southeast is actually going to get quite a bit of rain moving on through into Monday. You can already kind of see that stretching down just quite a bit, and then also spanning into Tuesday when that little band of moisture starts to push through. So wind gusts as of today, we peaked around 78 mile per hour wind gusts in Kipnuk and in around 55 in Nome today. So those wind gusts were very strong. What we saw today, you won't see tonight or tomorrow. Those winds are going to start to die down just a little bit. You will still have some powerful wind gusts along the western coastline, but they're going to be between 20 and 30 miles weaker than what we had seen today. So slightly less strong wind gusts are expected. You're still going to see those wind gusts, but they're not going to be as powerful as what we saw. So just looking ahead with our expected wind gusts for this afternoon, they're already significantly lower than what we saw earlier today. And then you're going to see into the overnight hours much, much, much less. I mean, just a breeze in Gamble compared to, you know, the 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts that we were seeing, 10 in Bethel. It's already starting to show a bit of relief moving on through into Monday. So that's something that you can hold on to, a little bit of hope that, you know, the storm is starting to finally move out and you won't have to really deal with these effects as much as you have been. So make sure to download our Alaska's Weather Source app. We have a lot of updates through our weather app. We also have a live blog from all those storm impacts, so you can just see the timeline of when things were starting to happen, and that also includes some relief that is coming for western coasts as well as some villages. So I know that the Alaska National Guard as well as Alaska State Troopers, they're bringing in some relief for search and rescue as well as just bringing in some help with sheltering and bringing equipment and supplies and things like that. So the good news is that you do have people coming to your communities and villages to help alleviate some of the damage that was caused by this devastating storm. But wind gusts, as I had mentioned, they're going to start to subside, moving more into the Brooks Range, still staying pretty strong across the Brooks Range, but you're going to see that by tomorrow morning, the wind gusts are pretty much gone by tomorrow morning. So overnight is the transitional process between that storm and calm conditions, but you can even see with our expected rainfall, nothing expected in Nome by tomorrow at noon, and then it's going to stay relatively dry across the western coastline. So more of that moisture is beginning to shift into the interior more so. You can already see that shifting down all the way from Fairbanks down into Seward and then spanning into southeast Alaska, which is going to see a little over an inch of rain moving on through. But just with our Alaska statewide forecast, we're seeing those temperatures still staying relatively normal across the board. It's going to be near freezing in the North Slope, so do expect some snow to move on through, but otherwise we're starting to see a little bit more rain pushing into the interior and into southern Alaska, and a little bit drier conditions moving into western Alaska. So you might still see some showers rolling on through western Alaska, but if you do, it's going to be very light rain. It's not going to be anything impactful like what we've been seeing. So that's something that is part of the good news that I keep trying to bring up despite this devastation that occurred. Now looking at our upper level forecast, I just want to show you this to show where we're going to start to see more of those wet impacts moving into south central through southeast. You can see little atmospheric river moving on through with some low pressure or with some high pressure just shifting south from southeast. So that's kind of what you can expect for southeast, just more wind gusts starting to move on through, more specifically for Haines and Yakutat in the central to more northern portion of the Panhandle, but temperatures still staying relatively normal, near 50 degrees in the upper 40s, low 50s, but more rain is coming to you on the way, both for Monday and just the rest of this week. So I know that I wasn't able to give you this forecast during the newscast, but you know, we had some very significant things happening, so I tried to balance it out as best as I could. Moving into the interior, you're also going to see some wet weather moving on through areas like Tok and some other areas across the interior. You might get a little bit of snow, but we're not really expecting too much across the interior. If anything, the higher elevation regions, you're going to get between 2 to 4 inches of snow, but otherwise everywhere else across the interior is going to stay relatively dry. But that winter storm warning is still in effect for the interior, and for the North Slope, and that's going to last through tomorrow afternoon. But that's where you can expect a little bit more snow to move on through, with those temperatures and those lows staying below freezing. So that's something that you can expect. I know that Anagan Pass is going to have between 1 to 2 feet of snow, but that's pretty much the snowiest area that we're expecting. So otherwise, not much snow otherwise. But western Alaska, of course, you've been the headline for the last couple of days. We're still going to see some gusts continuing, but regardless, it's not going to be anything as significant as what you saw yesterday and today. So there is hope. It's going to die down quite a bit. Any rain that you see here is going to be fairly light rain. Again, it's not going to be as devastating as what you already saw because the worst is already over. Now it's just the process of drier air moving on through and bringing in some slightly more benign conditions. So relief is on the way in pretty much every form, in weather form and also for your communities. So that's also pretty good. For the Aleutians, we're seeing some wet weather continuing, just a little drizzly across more of the western islands, and then a little bit more rain expected in Dillingham. But winds are staying relatively calm except for ADAC. Otherwise, those winds are still staying pretty calm at 15 miles per hour with normal temperatures. And South Central is going to see some wet weather moving on through for tomorrow with about 1/4 of an inch of rain expected for pretty much the entire region. Kodiak is going to be one of the most dry spots in South Central, but everywhere else we're expecting to see more rain moving on through, and that includes the Kenai Peninsula all the way to the Copper River Basin, even for Matsu. Everywhere expecting to see at least 1/4 of an inch of rain, but temperatures still staying pretty normal, around 50 degrees, which is kind of nice for this time of year. But looking ahead with our 7-day, slightly more wet weather continuing on pretty much the early part of this work week and then tapering off just a little bit by Wednesday, and then you might see a little bit more wet weather moving on through. But those temperatures are still staying pretty strong near 50 degrees, so that's pretty impressive. And even for Fairbanks, we're seeing those temperatures kind of teeter-tottering just a little bit, but still staying pretty normal. Lows back down below freezing by Wednesday. And that's kind of what you can expect for your 7-day. Again, statewide weather. We really needed to cover the Western Alaska impacts because obviously it was incredibly devastating. So I hope that everybody who was affected by the storm finds the relief that you need. If you do need anything, I know that local communities and especially your fire departments and the Alaska National Guard are working together to try to bring a little bit of relief to you and try to help in any way that they can. So I really hope that things get better for you in the western coast of Alaska. Southeast Alaska, you're going to get some rain this week. It's going to be a pretty wet week for you. And then we're going to see a little bit more snow moving into the interior and the North Slope. So with that, I hope everyone has a great Sunday night, and make sure that you stay safe and always stay weather aware. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great night.